Yeah, we read the ground rules at the beginning of every forum. And the ground rules are: 1, we ask you come to the meeting with a clear head, free of the influence of drink or drugs. 2, in any Pellin setting, you keep control of the pace and depth of your sharing. You may pass or say no to any suggestion. Your no will be accepted and not judged or analysed. No means no. 3, even though the meetings are recorded, we ask that people respect the confidentiality of those present and do not share anything they heard outside the meeting. In Pellin work, we have a strict no gossip rule. No gossip means we do not talk about anyone who is not present, even in a pleasant way. Okay, I'm in Norfolk in England, and it's just after 6. Nikki?
I'm in Wimbledon, South London, currently sunny.
Okay, Cynthia?
Cynthia in Kankakee, Illinois, and it is a little afternoon, and it is very, very hot.
Okay. Mary?
Mary in Rosarito Beach on a as yet cloudy day. But here's something for Peter. The waves were ideal for surfing. I've never seen as many surfers at the end of the road.
Wow. Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this was the first Olympics where surfing was in the Olympics.
Yeah.
Pretty, yeah. So, what we're going to talk about today is the life forces. Nikki, I'm holding up the interlocking cardboard circles of yellow, red, and green. And I guess with the Olympics coming to an end, there's some, I think there are elements there of what we've been talking about over the recent weeks, which has been purpose. And then last Sunday and this Sunday, we're talking about purpose and the life forces. Because I think it can be said that in this time of COVID and almost forces in the world that we can hardly come to terms with, that we often feel muddled. And I come from Australia, so I've got a predisposition to be interested in sport, okay? And that, that's very complex memory links for me. And Mary, you saying the surf's up, because that was the call when we were kids. Someone would say the surf's up, so we'd all go on our bicycles and go down and surf. And the Olympic Games, of course, go all the way back to Greece. Which was a time when, of course, the only athletes were men, and they performed naked. But it was a very large part of that culture. These were big events that happened every 4 years. as well as athletics, there were also competitions in poetry and drama. And I guess what I want to say in terms of Muddle, I guess I want to use Muddle in an extended form. Saying that Muddle is almost a normal condition in one level as human beings. I don't think animals are muddled, but we're muddled. And the way as we're going into this, I want to hold on to the theme of the Olympic Games, because in a way they're quite extraordinary. But, I thought I would not get into watching them this time. And I think my Australian memory links were too strong. So I did. But I don't know how many, but there are something like 200 or 300 different sports. So people are playing people are doing all these different things. And in some way, I feel my field of work at times almost wants to be as if there are only 2 or 3 sports in the Olympic Games. There are a lot of different ways that over all our time as human beings that we have solved problems of emotional and social pain, distress, and illness. But the professions almost want control and close it down to, 2 or 3 different schools of thought. And to me, well, I can stand back and say that's just silly. To not be interested in how, pardon me, Nikki, here I go, how people came through the trauma and mental illness. I want to repeat those words. How people came through the trauma and mental illness of slavery and became people who are now, well, simply leaders of possible solutions in the world. From the Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, and Martin Luther King, I don't think anyone would doubt their leadership. And of course, all the young, particularly Black women politicians in America, who are coming through with so much strength. And we don't, and that's why I want to use the almost a metaphor of the Olympic Games, that, hey, there are a whole lot of different ways to heal. And, David Pellin presented one of them, Freud presented the others, and there are a whole bunch around. And we should be open to all these different approaches. And if I can bring that back to one of the reasons we should be open to all the different approaches is that we do live in a state of somewhat existential muddle. We are enormously brilliant. We we were puny little creatures, and the others around us were more numerous than us, bigger than us, had sharp claws when we had puny hands, and we dominate all of them. We have the means to wipe them all out if we want to. We are the dominant species in an evolutionary sense, and we're brilliant. And yet we can't work out how to distribute the resources that we are so brilliant at creating or mining, so everyone gets a share of what is an abundance. We can't do it. We can't even stop ourselves from, in our brilliance and energy and creativity, we can't stop ourselves creating the, I guess, manufacturing excrement, if I can use that phrase, so the earth doesn't overheat and drown. We may not be able to stop ourselves doing that. And it's part of Gestalt therapy that the basic metaphor in Gestalt therapy is around food. We take in food, we select it, prepare it, we digest it, and then we take it in and we absorb that which is nourishing and we excrete that which is not nourishing. And yet it seems now we excrete from our manufacturing and industrial processes excrement that is just accumulating and it's going to pollute us. So, and if we bring that down to an individual level, from decluttering because we're surrounded by too much mess, or career choices, finding solutions in relationships or finding relationships, we are often in a muddled state. And that's where I want to come in, and that's where I'm saying the Pellin Tools provide precision in the face of the muddle in which we often live. And whether that muddle's about our immediate environment, the things we have and how they're organized and enough and tidy, or whether they're too much out of control and pulling us down, or whether the muddle is about how we're going to solve problems that are financial or problems that are work-oriented. And I think there is good judgment and common sense that people have, and they make sort of good choices. There are resources that we often draw on, like the work of Maria Kondo, which is very popular at the moment, about decluttering. And that is coming up with something, the aim of which is to reduce muddle. And So I want to present the life forces today as tools that can give us precision in some of the existential muddle that we live in. So I'm holding up the device, and I guess I want to go back to the Olympics and the Olympics and purpose. You know, there are people, I think there's something like 200 countries there, a whole bunch of sports, might be 100 sports. The number is something like 80. 80 is the number of countries that won at least one Olympic medal. Now, a whole lot of countries only got one, okay? And maybe they only got one bronze medal. But what that achievement represented to that person, I don't know, from, you know, you could pick a country, you know, from America to Australia to Great Britain to Canada. I happen to be associated with the countries that win most of the medals outside of China and Japan and Russia. They're the other one. But I've got links, I guess, yeah, I've got links to those four countries that win a whole lot of medals because they're into sport. And it wasn't muddled. And it wasn't muddled in part. Well, I'll get to the life forces in a moment. I'm holding up the device again, Nikki. It wasn't muddled because there is something in that activity that almost, and this is quite, I think it's useful to explore. I think it's useful to explore because of the precision. It wasn't muddled because people on a daily basis are in touch with their purpose. You know, whether they're, you know, someone who's going to the Olympic Games from a small country and knows they know they're not going to win a medal, but they're still going to go. Let alone the people who win medals. And the figures are quite, you know, the figures were in the media presentation. So I think there are 335 medals. So that would mean there are about 100 events. I think I've got these figures right. But, you know, I'm talking to the people who are going and for whom the activity might be, well, would certainly be a part-time activity. They wouldn't have the resources or the time to train for a substantial amount of time every day. But a lot of them have the ambition and the purpose that they would be training every day. So they are in touch with their purpose every day. I don't want to here touch on the part of how that event isn't, that activity is an underlying purpose, because it will come to an end, because it doesn't matter how good you are, you can't go to the Olympic Games forever as a participant, as an active athlete. So it will come to an end, but for the time it's present, they're in touch with their purpose, and you can see it. You can see it in the stories. You can see it in the wins and losses. These are people who are in touch with their purpose, and I think represent the power of purpose. And then if we bring in the life forces and using the games as a way of looking at how the life forces do provide precision. Because first up, they had to they had to cancel it. Then they had to push through and say it was going to happen, announce it was going to happen, and insist it happen. And that was in the, talk about Muddle, that was in the face of the country of Japan not wanting it to happen. The majority of people wanted the games cancelled. They didn't want it to happen. So they pushed through that Muddle, and it is the Olympics, a large international organization, but in view of many people, including myself, is run by white elderly men who are probably very narrow-minded. That's the sort of power structure. It seemed to be the power structure. But on the other hand, this time around, they have, as I mentioned, I think I used it talking about a little bit, maybe last Sunday and on Wednesday, you know, they brought in these young sports, they brought in these sports for teenagers. And they've been forced to listen to women who were saying, I'm not going to compete because I'm going to look after my mental health. Young women saying that. So there's an emerging use of, that's been happening for some decades, it's not new, but if we say that an athlete in the main sorry, a little bit slow. If we say an athlete in the main is something like that, preponderance of performance life force, some caring life force, some material life force, but an athlete of that outstanding, you know, the champion athletes of outstanding quality couldn't have much less performance life force than that. Now that would be an argument, another example of what we were looking at on Wednesday when we were saying, you know, is there something built in that there should be an equal amount of each of them? Well, I think if you look at the athletes in the Olympics, no. Maybe at some other stage in their life, they'll want a different configuration of the life forces. And they probably will. But and not while they're competing, not while they're not while they're fulfilling. Hi, Elizabeth. I'm being very Australian. this evening. I'm talking about sport, okay? I'm talking about the Olympic Games. Yeah, I think, in Oregon, you would have seen this. Australians who go to the surfing beaches or the ski resorts. And my daughters lived for a while and grew up part of their childhood in Whistler, which is a great ski resort in Canada. And that attracts, a lot of young people going there to ski and, having a part-time job, lots of them. And my eldest daughter and I was visiting them and looked at me once and said, I've got to slow down and get this. Papa, you're just another Jaffa. And I sort of shook my head, what are you talking about? She said, you're just another Jaffa. I said, what's a Jaffa? She said, just another fucking Australian, okay? Whistler was full of Jaffas. The surfing beaches of Oregon and California would be too. So we're talking about the Olympic Games as an example of the life forces, but also an example, and I'm surprised at my thinking about this, to be frank, but as an example how, putting on a sporting event is not as hard as governing a country. So, I want to put that disclaimer in for sure. But, the Olympic Games are an example of creating order out of chaos, out of muddle, out of diversity. You've got all sorts of different people there. You've got the very precise ladies and gentlemen who ride their horses and do those odd sort of things. And then you've got 13-year-old girls on skateboards. But they create a great deal of order out of that muddle, what could be. And the muddle was doubled down, with COVID. And as I said earlier here, the vast majority of the Japanese people just wanted to cancel. They did not want it. So, this is a group of people who, in the main, I do not at all admire, organize this thing, and the precision in the tools was, they are people who, in the main, I would not admire politically or socially in terms of their values. But they put together this thing which had enough carrying life force to adapt with force around women who decided not to compete because they were going to look after their mental health, and women who were competing on the highest level but wanted some dispensation because they were new mums. They had a baby who was 2 or 3 years old. And this organization adapted to all that and made it work, and almost stepped aside. We'll talk about valuation strata in a moment. Had enough strength to step aside and not get in the way of those women having their voice. you know, there's no doubt at all that 30 years ago those women would not have had that voice, just would not have. You know, and so there was enough. The precision here is the caring life force finding some caring, but at and the material life force of being organized and being able to count the numbers. I don't know what that white line across my screen is. It's the sun or something.
Yeah, it's a shaft of sunlight.
I've got a sunbeam coming in. That's got to mean something. Might go away. Yeah, I'm finding that, and I think the precision here is that life force, and we don't listen to this new force that is saying that the caring has to be taken into account. We're going to lose out, and they didn't. So, and the precision here is when the life forces are attached to purpose, then they can provide real accuracy. You know, the accuracy would be if the configuration in the powerful side of the Olympics was more like that, if the caring bit was really shrunk, yeah, we'll look after the athlete, you know, of course we'll look after the athlete. If it was only that size, the caring life force wouldn't have been there to listen to, in a way it was two groups. It was young women and young mothers who were being adamant in terms of their opinions and their action, even to the point we will not compete. We won't take part. And the accuracy in the life forces is saying, yeah, if the caring's like that, where the male powerful dominating group, you know, we're going to be in trouble. We're going to be in real deep trouble. So they were forced, and this is where I'm saying the precision's here, they're forced to expand their caring life force, which means giving up some of the power that is in the performance and material life force and making some smart decisions. And, you know, I would speculate the men who maintained the power had daughters who said, Dad, you're on the wrong track. Or granddaughters who, Grandpa, you're on the wrong track. But it's quite an amazing change. It's quite an amazing change. And that was on the world stage. Everyone to see. Can't be sort of, not to be retracted. If we bring that down to decluttering or procrastination about typing, which is myself, then what the life force, if we bring that one down, what the life forces is, say mine, around the discipline I need around writing and typing, you know, it's sort of, I'm just fiddling with my device, Nikki. It's a very good device. You know, that's me sort of like that. You know, if I can talk to you about the struggles I have with my writing, and if I can get your empathy and your compassion and your feedback, you know, that meets my caring life force needs. But the writing is in the performance life force. And it's just not big enough. It's not big enough for me to find the example. I'm sorry, it's not big, my performance life force is not big enough to feed the discipline, the loneliness, the sheer grind, where I would parallel the typing I have to do with someone who is daily doing their, yeah, because it seems that one example I saw, marathon runners have to do weights because at a certain time when you're coming towards the end of the marathon race, you need your muscles to work in a particular way, sort of automatically, that only comes from weightlifting. I'm not absolutely sure on that. But yeah, Cynthia.
Okay, so here's the practical question in terms of what you were saying, because I think I'm having the same problem. You know, part of me, you know, I what I'm trying to do with essentialist astrology, although I may be switching to Indian astrology, but that may not make a difference with what I'm doing. But here's the thing. I mean, I think part of me is like, oh gosh, are people going to be mad at me? I mean, I had my former astrology teacher who's given me a hard time, and that really hurt my feelings. And so what do you do in terms of that? I mean, I think I can when I'm not, right now I'm not doing it. I mean, I can muster up the discipline to do things, but how do you get past, how do you build up your performance life force? I mean, I don't want to become, you know, I think there's also a part of me that's afraid to develop a performance life force because I don't want to become, you know, selfish and mean and nasty, you know, in my stuff. And I don't want to, and I don't want people to get mad at me. You know, I mean, there's that, I guess that's all caring life force too. And, you know, and it's hard to do it when I feel like I'm alone. I guess my question is, what do you do about it? Especially since you're talking, you have the same issue.
That's the bit, yeah, that's the bit where I talked about recently, a deep understanding of, okay? And that, because I see that, and I guess it's, for me, I guess I'm, you know, partly following the Olympics and all the little stories around them, because I want to get something out of it for me, okay, in my struggle. And the struggle with the performance life force, deep understanding of performance life force, almost anything around the performance life force needs discipline, okay? It doesn't matter who you are, you know. You know, you can be Judi Dench or Brad Pitt, but you've got to learn your lines. You can't say, well, you learn my lines for me, okay? And even a politician can say, you write my speech for me, but still the politician's got to deliver the speech. And if it's too much outside of him, it'll be a dud. So one of the deep understandings of performance life force is always being to find that self-discipline. and then find different ways to find it, okay? Different ways to explore performance life force that isn't necessarily about my writing, okay? If I could get to the swimming pool and swim a bit, if I could do some of the ways I'm fixing up my house that are a bit more audacious, a bit splashier, okay? I mean, this is true, and I think I can demonstrate it. One of my gimmicks in terms of trying to get into my writing is, can you see them?
They're very pretty.
I bought these sunflowers, 8 huge sunflowers, okay? And yeah, it's like, performance life forces, this is me. And you can see it in those athletes. This is me. Even if I only come 12th, you know, I'm representing Lebanon at the Olympic Games, and that's me. So it is, and in a sense, it's finding strength within us rather than outside us. It's being prepared to take the pain, to take the shot. And, you know, performance life force is about taking risks and being creative. You know, a risk is a risk. A rose is a rose. You know, sometimes when you take risks, you're going to fail. You're going to fail, you're going to fall, you're going to come 12th. So I guess it's sort of what I mean by a deep understanding of one of the life forces. It's going into all the nooks and crannies of it, okay?
I guess specifically I was asking the whole thing about, and that makes sense, all the thing with performance life force, but then there's, you know, my caring life force that sort of cringes at all of that. And how do you work with those two? Like, for example, when I was a kid, and, you know, I used to get teased, you know, because being a bright girl was not, you know, something that was very popular, you know, and so I would get a good grade, and I would, you know, hide it under there so nobody could see it. I mean, you know, how do you, I guess it's the whole thing. I mean, I'm happy with quietly, I mean, sometimes I lose energy, and I do, you know, I'm happily with quietly being disciplined and doing my Anki, and, you know, but when I was learning Japanese and, you know, quietly studying on my own, but I had to be forced to talk, and I'm still, you know, I still don't go out of my way to go try to talk to native speakers, because, you know, I guess it's that whole, I guess my question is, and maybe discipline is, but I don't know, you know, quietly being disciplined doesn't get me, I can do it quietly on my own, but get you past that, putting yourself out there.
Yeah, no, yeah, Elizabeth.
Well, and I mean, it's not like I will have something better to say than Peter on this, but I've discovered something about myself regarding sort of that caring life force cringe at performance life force is the things I've been most successful at putting out there are things that I have been utterly, completely convinced somebody will need. So, I mean, please correct me if I'm wrong here. For me, I have to talk caring life force into letting that happen because it is something that will matter to caring life force. And, you know, I have this much understanding of the tool, but that's the only thing that's worked for me so far.
Well, and I was thinking about even when I was a child and I was trying to succeed in being a lawyer, you know, my grandmother's been gone about 6 years. Most of what I did actually even performance life force, it was to make my grandmother proud of me. That's what mattered. You know, it was all about making my grandmother proud. And it was really kind of funny when she was more excited that I learned how to knit than, you know, getting summa cum laude in law school. Which she said, I heard you got summa kabuma. I don't know what that means, but I'm proud of you.
That's lovely.
So,
Yeah.
but she was way proud that I learned how to knit, and she told her sister and bragged to her sister. And I think my cousin, I feel so bad. I'm like, my cousin on it is probably going to hate me because her sister said, oh, I'm going to have to make my granddaughter do it too. So.
Yeah, I think I think there's a way, because when I said the discipline bit, that's only sort of one part of it. And I think with your help, particularly your help, Mary, I think I'd like to try and sort of come out with something like, you know, a bit like one of those lists you get, you know, the 100 greatest pop songs or something. I think I should do lists of 100 things in the, or 50 things in the performance life force, and just make a long list. I think that'd be useful. And it's something I want to do for a bunch of time. But I think when we're doing it directly for somebody else, I think that has a real power to it. And one of the things that sorry, I got distracted on a story I want to tell, which I will in a minute. You know, we sort of, in performance life force, we need an audience. And I think when we can directly sort of know the audience and see the audience, that there is a place in performance life force. We're doing it for ourselves. We're just not doing it for somebody else. And that's a difference, and a difference in precision between the caring life force and the performance life force. And because there used to be a thing in my field of work, needs by being a therapist or social worker. It's probably still around. It's just sort of nonsense, okay? But now, of course, we're doing it for ourselves, even in the caring life force, because we want to make the contribution. But the precision is we can feel in the caring life force, we can sort of put ourselves aside, okay? In the performance life force, we do not want to put ourselves aside. We want to be front and center. But in terms of my knitting story, okay, and a lot of people know this, but people who are following the Olympic Games know. England has a young man called Daly, who's a great diver, and he's been a sort of a household name in England for years because he started very young, but then he wasn't very successful, and now he's been successful. But he has come out as gay, okay? But he not only came out as gay, but when he's waiting for his turn to dive, he sits there and knits, okay? And he's doing it very openly. I like knitting. My husband likes the fact that I knit. And this is a guy at the Olympic Games saying this, okay? So I had to tell that knitting story. And he's doing it he sort of landed on his feet a bit. You know, it seemed like a very good relationship. And his husband, his partner, I think is, you know, a bit of a bigwig in Hollywood. His diving career is probably going to come to an end soon because of age. but he's making a whole thing about the knitting. He's not hiding it anyway. And that's performance life force in itself. I guess the audacity of some of these young, well, he's not young, but some of the gay and young athletes is a sort of different use of performance life force. You know, I'll use my performance life force to be the best there is, because you, who have more material life force than anyone in the world, will give me recognition and will give me a gold medal, okay? So even though they're into the performance life force, they were servants of those in power who were white bigoted men, okay? And now and of course it's happened in other sports. It's happened in women's basketball, and it's happened in tennis. Now, I'm a sports person. I'm the most important person, not you. And that's where there's a precision about the sports people also grabbing the material life force part of it. You know, they make fortunes. How that relates down to us when we're, say, this particular example of wanting to further our performance life force because we want to get our work out into the world, then we need a motivation and resources about the material life force. And again, I think that's where the precision can be. And, you know, the material life force is what I'm not good at is, you know, at my best, it's sort of like that. I'm just holding it up, Nikki, and it's sort of half yellow. And about, then a bunch, the smallest one is green material life force. Yeah. Half yellow performance is about a third, and then the material life force is a sliver. You know, that is a little bit not sustainable, okay? So we need to find, I need to find the sustainability behind my projects for getting the Pellin material out there. So I've got to look at the material life force part of it. Yeah, Mary.
Well, I just wanted to say to Cynthia that, you know, my understanding of what I know about you in relation to your life forces is that your memory links help your performance life force be very squeezed. I was talking about how a life force can be squeezed and kind of distorted really from what it might have been if other circumstances had prevailed. And so I think it's your aspirations of wanting to explore performance life force and come to terms with it and let it expand are really important and good. But it's important to be a bit gentle with yourself because, you know, I realized my material life force was squeezed, you know, maybe 30 years ago, and it still has trouble. When you're trying to unsqueeze something with a lot of memory links, and you know, that's kind of good for if you're open to coming to virtual Pellin Italy again, that's a good place to explore that conflict within you that's there. And, you know, things that you're doing like in Animal Crossing to expand it a little bit, even though it's not particularly about the audience, but about allowing the creativity. That's all good stuff about looking at it deeply, the way Peter was saying. But we can't just say, I should be different, therefore I am.
Yes, yes. No, and I think one of the points of precision is sort of being able to work out what we mainly are, because there's a different level of muddle that comes in when we confuse them. Okay, you know, when I confuse sort of material life force and caring life force in a way that I'll get on top of my material life force if a whole lot of people like me. And that's not where it goes. Or if someone, yeah, it'd be one, if someone has a lot of caring life force, they may not be able to provide, pardon me, they may not be able to have the absolute self-centeredness that makes an Olympic gold medal winner, okay? You know, they just need people and to be around people and, you know, to have the, I guess, softer power that's in the caring life force. Yeah, you know, they could maybe play a lot of tennis or, you know, have gymnastics as a hobby, but they're not going to have that self-discipline that takes them to the top. That's a whole bunch of performance life force. Mary.
Well, like how much of what life forces we have is something I've thought about, because when I did my one performance just a few days before lockdown, I didn't know all my lines and stuff, but I carried it off, and I really liked having the audience and came to life with the audience. And what was supposed to happen was that in the June, this was in March, in the June I was supposed to give 3 performances in the Hollywood Fringe Festival. And I can only speculate now what might have happened, but maybe I would have, you know, on top of the discipline I started developing, maybe I would have, you know, pulled that off. You know, learned my lines better, and the whole thing of the audience experience being fresher and, you know, knowing I was going to have a live audience again, you know, sort of pulling me towards that. I was aware all along I didn't have that kind of burning thing for an audience. You know, many people in the solo show community kind of hunger. I didn't have that hunger, which is a slight disadvantage in terms of finding the discipline for sure. You know, and then the way things turned out with COVID and then being absorbed in helping somebody who was very sick, and going into a low, it's like I've kind of dropped out now, and I don't know that there'll be a way of going back in. It's hard to tell, because you know, I'm not writing. I can't participate well, even when I was going to the writing exercises. What am I trying to say? It's like it was because I was trying to nurture something to kind of encourage the performance life force into a manifestation it hadn't had before. And then I was cut off from that exploratory, that kind of trying and testing time that would have told me whether I could carry that through. And now it's just like really, really far away. And I'm very aware of, not being carried through by a hunger for it. And added to that was all the work I put into the book, and it's sold hardly any copies. And that's it's funny, the material life force kind of is like, it's really relevant to getting clients, and it's really relevant to getting things out in the world. If you don't have a team, if you're trying to do it yourself. Anyway, I don't know if that's on that last bit, but I guess I've kind of finished what I was trying to say. But it's strange to think what might have been, but for this kind of, I might have found my natural place for performance life force, and had the satisfaction of having developed a discipline that I now haven't developed. And so that's I'm a little bit sad about that, really.
Yeah.
I'm puzzled, like, I don't.
I think, Cynthia, in a moment, I think there's often a lot of sadness. I think it's the right word, Mary, about sort of unfulfilled things in the performance life force. Okay, and it's sort of a place where not everyone can win. I mean, that's just sort of, yeah. And when you read stories of athletes or successful athletes or successful authors, you can you can get the I'm sorry, the thing I'm looking for, that moment of chance. It could have gone one way, it could have gone the other. It went the right way for them. We tend not to hear about the ones where it went the wrong way. But I think the burning desire thing is important. I think if we don't have the burning desire, I think burning desire is a sort of large element in performance life force. I was reading about this unhappy lady who, the only relationship she really had was with her sisters, her father who was stern, her brother who was a drunk, Emily Bronte, and produced Wuthering Heights. I mean, there's something about burning desire that I think some of us just almost don't have, and don't have that bit of caring life force. I think David had burning desire. Yeah, definitely. And he kept, sorry.
I was going to say, well, in Cynthia's case, that's a bit difficult because you're in the stage of fanning the flame to see with,
Yeah.
So you don't want to set up a situation where if you're not free enough with your performance life force to know you've got a burning desire, I mean, and then say, well, I won't try then because I haven't got a burning desire. That would be my anxiety for Cynthia with you saying that.
Actually, can I come in? Sorry about that.
I was only going to say, in a way, what I was doing with the performance I did have was fanning the flame to see what happened.
I think I do, and I understand what Peter's saying about the hunger. But I don't know if it's for an audience per se, but there's a certain kind of, and I think you see it in athletes too, and really good ones. It's at a certain point of it, it's not even, I mean, it's not even the audience that matters. It's, I mean, because I do this, like when I'm doing astrology, and even when I was a lawyer and stuff, there's a certain way of having done it well. And it doesn't even matter. I mean, I remember, like, you know, when I was in school and stuff, if I got good grades and I knew I hadn't studied and it was just easy, it was like, it didn't mean anything. It only meant something. You know, I could get, you know, an A+, and if it was easy, I didn't care. But I could, you know, if I knew I work hard and I knew you know, and I squeaked by with a C or a B-, and I knew that I really worked. That was more important. Maybe it has to do with where the feelings of maybe that's not, maybe that's a different tool, the feelings of accomplishment. But I don't know if I don't know. I mean, I think, you know, I know there's something that's driving me, and that won't, in terms of, I just, maybe that's purpose. I don't know what it is, but there's something that I do. I mean, I can't always be in touch with it, and it gets squashed. And I know when it's squashed, it's not good. You know, I think of it more in terms of, I call it, I mean, at least I believe I do. But it's, yeah, it's, you know, it's funny when I'm looking at what configuration, I'm like, well, if I'm really called for this, I'd have what I needed to do it. In terms of who I am, I would imagine. I mean, that's my own spirituality. That you know, that, you know, you're you know, that it's something, there was a phrase when I was in Christian circles, you know, God doesn't call the equipped, God equips the called. And maybe I'm talking more spiritually than is appropriate here, but yeah, but I was thinking about what I was gonna say, that it kind of is that with, I've been, when and playing Animal Crossing, I have different characters and it's taking a lot of time, but I guess it's worthwhile if I'm working things through, I guess. But you know, I have, because one of my characters is a child who's very clearly my material life force. There's a child who seems to be my performance life force, and then I've got an adult who's like the housewife character, who seems to be my caring, because like when I was playing her, I instinctively knew how to handle something with my spouse that my other parts didn't know how to handle. It's really funny with the two children, with the flowers, is my material life force child is enjoying the flowers and is fine with watering them, and is enjoying trying to work out. They have a thing where you can work out making hybrids with your flowers, and she's enjoying doing that, but she's not really interested in making a pretty garden, you know. Where my performance life force child just loves to make these pretty gardens and loves to do, and that's who's doing it. And like even last night, she had this idea, she wanted to make a princess section. So she just did, you know, she had the stuff, and I'm going to make this princess, this ice princess section in my thing. So it's just, she was going to have a story, but she didn't come up with a story for it. But she says, I don't care. I want my ice princess. So you know, I don't know that this helps with the muddle, then maybe maybe I am working through this, but that's what I thought of when Mary was talking about the first time, and then you know, but anyways, so I don't know if that's relevant for anything, but thank you for
Well,
indulging me.
no, it is, and I also think it's important that we take concepts like you know, someone's got you know, in performance life force, you know, you got to be on fire for it. Well, maybe, or for some people, and yeah, everyone's not Emily Bronte, and I think in our approach, well, okay, you know, you're handling the tool that way. Now I always handle it this way, but maybe that way will work for you. You know, I think it's that flexibility. Well, to put it simply, what works for somebody rather than what we are saying the tool is. And yeah, I think there's a real difference in that. And, you know, I think you could, well, me, okay? I mean, I've been writing about this daily at the moment because I think I'm probably approaching the end of writing on me and Dave. And I'm very aware of how my commitment to him, how my commitment to the work was, and particularly my view of him as having something really special. That really developed over a lot of time. I mean, there was a sort of dramatic story I tell about when I made a commitment to him because of the assassination of Dr. King, and that's true. But that commitment, I know, was not to his material, as this is someone I can help, you know, given this event has occurred, tragic event has occurred. But the commitment to the material, and the way I'm using it today, you know, half a century later, literally, that really happened slowly over time. I don't think there was any fire in it. It wasn't like that, you know. It was of a different nature. Yeah, it was absolutely of a different nature. And now it's very strong, and I could give names to it, like passion, and people at times have given me feedback that I'm passionate about my work. But underneath, I would say myself that my performance life force is different than that, okay? I know I don't have to be first. That's not part of my performance life force. And I don't think it's part of everybody's performance life force. So I think Mary was right to pick me up on that. Thank you.
I was thinking on a different subject that we were talking about before. When you talk about the high earnings and things, and the sadness, I was thinking about those figures like I read recently. At any one time, 99% of actors are unemployed. Like that wasn't anything to do with COVID. And I read about in the tennis world, there's the few people that make a lot of money, and the middle and lower ranks of people that play even in the world-class tournaments make really paltry monies because it's the winners who earn the money plus the sponsorship that they allow. And so there's a whole world of pain and sadness in performance life force, and
yes,
there is. At the front that's not relevant to other life forces.
Yeah.
Same way.
No, there is, and again, deep study of performance life force. I think if you studied that, my guess is that you'd find people getting their real unsatisfaction out of it, okay? Finding a way to, maybe with friends or colleagues or other people. Yeah, almost a question, you know, what is a good life? You know, do you have to be Roger Federer to get the most out of tennis? And all right, you know, I imagine there's some tennis pros for whom it's not that sad. Okay, I'm speculating here, and at the same time, it's my optimism. But I know, hand up, you know, there are some people who do my sort of work, who aren't the most highly paid, aren't famous, aren't celebrities, or, you know, if Adele gets into trouble, someone will find her a celebrity psychotherapist. But I know there are a whole bunch of us who, it's not sad. Do you know what I mean? And I imagine that's true almost across some. And I think in terms of performance life force, probably because I think what I do, I mean, I can joke, you know, when, and I think I've said to one or two of you, you know, I can be, when mindfulness comes in, and I can be a very clever critic. But in fact, I'm just green with envy. I've had this stuff for decades, and someone comes in and finds a way to market it. Yeah, I don't think about it much. Yeah. So, but I think I think it would be interesting to go into. I think it's almost be finding the narratives, the stories of people who, yeah, because I guess even the way I opened this session, we're taken up with what is presented on the media, aren't we? That's the story we get, Cynthia.
Well, actually, what is it? It was sort of like, and I'm actually a little muddled about this in terms of, you know, I think with people, I mean, not everybody who does it is that, but there's a certain amount of, in any field, but there's a certain amount of where a craft and acting as a craft and even doing sports as a craft, it becomes almost a life in itself. I don't know how, and sometimes,
Yeah.
sometimes it's like this for me with astrology, where it's not even me first per se, it's that the sort of the craft takes over. I don't know how to put it, but you know, and you can't, I mean, is that purpose, is that performance life force? I mean, and it doesn't even matter if there's an audience at a certain point. If you know, you know, and even sometimes when I'm making things pretty in my island, it doesn't matter if anybody else sees it, all like people do, but there's something about having done something that's beautiful, making something beautiful, that just takes over. Is that part of the Pellin Tools at all, or is that performance life force? Is that purpose?
Well,
is that?
Well, I would say that's purpose, and that's performance life force. Yeah, I'm sort of interested in these sort of questions, because there's a sort of mystery there, and I think there's a performance life force of, you know, the stories come out a bit romantic, but I think they're real. You know, someone who's leading what could be regarded as a, you know, fairly mundane or ordinary life, but, you know, writing poetry or learning Shakespeare, or painting pictures, or, yeah, I think one way to get at that, and there is a sort of knowledge about it, not a literature, is male-oriented. But, you know, men need a shed, right? And they can go into the shed and have a woodworking project, or da-da-da-da-da. Or, yeah, I think one example I do know a bit about because of southern Italy and because of my interest in the food of southern Italy. You know, there are some women who just cook at home, right? But, you know, southern Italians say the best meals aren't in restaurants. You know, the best meals are at home. And women who just sort of endlessly experiment. I don't think it's an English, I know it's not an English tradition, but experiment, and it's not so much the case now, but when I was first there, you could see, you know, older ladies walking through the countryside, often just at the side of the road, picking herbs, picking things that they knew would help. And I don't have any doubts that there are people who've lived sort of very full lives creating great dishes. But yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff, I guess, particularly about performance life force and the way we talk about it in terms of an audience, that, the examples are sort of all in the public domain, aren't they? And my guess is it's not necessarily like that, okay? Yeah. Do you want to come in, tall Nikki?
Hi. Haven't got a lot to say. I was struck by, can't even remember the word for it that people were saying about, things, something about the drive and feeling inspired and that kind of thing. And the reason I can't think of the word you were using is because what I was noticing was I just don't have that, and I think I'm having it less and less. And then I was starting to wonder, oh, maybe I'll have that in future. It's about just the sort of stage I'm at the moment of sort of changeover of letting go of what life has been like, and maybe there'll be a different life for me in the future. So basically, I was just having thoughts just around that kind of thing.
Did you mean the phrase burning desire?
Yes, thank you. Burning desire. Couldn't even think of it. I just don't have any. But I used to feel about burning desire. But it was all about, but it was driven by caring life force. Absolutely had to use my caring life force and was driven to contribute from that. And which is not, I think, it wasn't what anyone else was talking about. It wasn't not, I think, the usual form of burning desire, is it? So it's from the need to contribute from hurt. So then once you've healed the hurt enough, I'm sort of, I'm like, oh, well, now what? No burning desire.
Yeah. Well, that's why I think purpose is useful. And I think it's important that we present purpose as sometimes it's a search for purpose. That's the purpose. It's sort of working in that dimension rather than having, a neatly parceled up purpose. Maybe, yeah. And I think that is the sort of what next question, genuine what next question. Okay, well, we're coming to an end there. Thank you for coming. I'm in Norfolk in England. And it's a little bit darker at this time than it was a month ago. Yeah. Nikki?
Well, I'm in Wimbledon and it's still pleasant. And yesterday it absolutely tipped it down. This morning it was tipping it down. And it's just really weird. We just have very opposite ends of days. Okay.
Cynthia?
Cynthia, Kankakee, Illinois. It is about 1:30 and it is still very, very hot. And today was very helpful. I appreciate it. It was good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Elizabeth?
I'm Elizabeth in Eugene, Oregon, and it's about 11:30 here. That's all.
Okay. Mary?
Mary in Rosarito Beach, same thing, around 11:30 on the West Coast.
Okay. Well, on Wednesday we want examples, if we can, about this. And I think I'd like to sort of, for Wednesday, really try and stay on the theme of muddle and precision. Yeah, I would like to. Okay, bye for now.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.